Dennis, I definitely think the common denominator of the biggest concern for dog owners or dog lovers is the issue of needs. How do I teach my pet to relieve itself outside the house or in a certain place?
Exactly, yes, that is very important. Now that's another little tip that I can give you. That person who has a small puppy that they just bought, that they want to rescue, that doesn't have all the vaccinations, it's very important for the puppy to relieve itself at least in a pad, in a diaper. Okay, so they are practically going to buy him his pad, they are going to put the pads, they are going to give him his water. The water can be controlled according to the activity because it's inside the house with air conditioning and low. And it is very important that the dog is not under any type of medication. That is why it's very important. First, check with the veterinarian that the dog is all right, and then you can give him 2 to 3 meals a day. Okay, that's very important. Then that the dog eats. Before he eats and after he eats, put him in his area to see if the dog does number 1 and number 2. It's extremely important. Then once the dog gets used to that texture, it will leave the odor of number 1 and number 2. He starts to get used to it. That stimulates him and he gets used to that texture.
What do you think of that technique that said that you have to keep them locked in a crate and eventually take them out during the first days? Is it a bit drastic?
No, that technique is also used, but if you are going to teach the dog, if the dog is 4 or 5 or 6 months old and can hold a little longer, for example, and has already had its vaccination, you can put the dog in a crate. Then they learn to stay inside the crate, because normally dogs do not like to mess number 1, number 2 in small areas. Exactly. So the dog learns to hold it. You don't do it. And it turns out that when you take it out immediately, they give him the opportunity to do it on the grass. That is for those people who want to accustom the dog to do it on the grass. But the person who wants to accustom the dog that lives in a 30-story building, an apartment, has a small dog, does not want it to touch the ground. You can get him used to the pads with his pen. You can have a dog that will do it in both textures, also on the pads for emergency, when the owner is gone for many hours, and on the grass when the owner is in the house. Practically, you can combine the two, but it's very important to control the water and food and that the dog is always supervised. Remember that they are puppies, it's a baby, and they get into a lot of trouble. Do not leave the dog outside in the yard alone for 2, 3, 4 months. It is not recommended. It's very important that the dog is watched or locked in a safe place.
How is the subject of positive reinforcement to avoid what sadly many people do, which is to scold them, yell at them, threaten them with the newspaper? How is the positive reinforcement for those cases of accidents?
Well, remember that the home remedy of the newspaper is a very old remedy. Even my grandmother used to do it. Look, positive reinforcement is when the dog, for example, is urinating in the area where he's not supposed to. You congratulate him very well. You give him affection. You can even give him a cookie. You are giving positive reinforcement to the dog. You are giving him to understand that he did something right. And the dog finally, after several days and weeks, is learning the routine. But it's very important to use positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement for a little scolding.
But it's a voice scolding.
It can be a voice scolding, it doesn't have to be physical. No, you don't have to hit the dog or hit it with a newspaper. No, it is not any physical contact directly, no.
They can even deduce and analyze and be able to say, for this they congratulate me, for this they scold me, and thus learn.
Exactly. And a very important point, Patricia, is the following. When a person brings a puppy that has just been born, that's 8 weeks old. Remember this, the dog is not born learned. So what happens the moment the dog comes home? It urinates, and the dog is doing something natural. Now, there are times when owners scold him immediately the first time. I recommend that the first week they don't scold him. Why? Because the dog has to urinate, but you are scolding him right away. But the puppy doesn't know that he is being scolded for doing it on the floor. Maybe he thinks I can't pee in front of my master. And then he gets scolded several times. At the beginning, when he first arrives home, the dog will be afraid to urinate when you have him on the leash and you take him out. He doesn't want to pee because he stares at the owner. So, the first week, you tell him no, but no physical correction. Do you understand me? This is very important for the dog to learn. You grab him fast. If he's urinating, you carry him fast, you take him to the grass, and sometimes you don't even say no at the beginning on the tail, which is the floor of the slab. Pick him up and put him on the grass and congratulate him so that finally the partner boils positive. And after the first week, we can say no to him.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for being
Thanks
here in Amor de Perros, and see you next week in Trending.